say, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, so how am I not going to talk about gratitude? What's the deal on gratitude? Here's how I think it works. You can't be grateful unless you know what you have, and you won't be able to take care of what you've been given unless you're grateful. That's sort of how it works. And so the key scriptural passage in terms of this is, of course, the 10 lepers who come to Jesus and say, have mercy on me, have pity on me. And Jesus says, okay, go show yourselves to the priests. And so they walk this long-ass trek. And somewhere in the middle of the journey, they're healed, they're clean, they're no longer lepers. But only one of them comes back who's a foreigner, a Samaritan, and he thanks Jesus. And of course, Jesus says, didn't I cure 10? And the only one who came back to thank me was this guy. Well, part of the deal, I think, is that this guy really, really knew what he had been given. He knew what he had, and so he could be grateful because he knew what he had. And then I think the presumption is that he will, from that moment forward, be careful with what he's been given and will continue to be grateful. This last couple of days I've had a handful of homies who work here who say, it's Thanksgiving, and this is going to be the first time I've ever been breathing free air on Thanksgiving in 10 years, 20 years, that kind of thing. But let's be honest, I've had as many people in my office crying in the last 2 days saying, oh shit, it's Thanksgiving, because it brings back a lot of stuff and a lot of memories, and you start to remind yourself of things you didn't have. Helen Keller, who's a famous, born deaf and blind and unable to speak, wrote once, I'm too busy being grateful for what I have to waste any time lamenting what I have been denied. And that's good advice, it seems to me. But you have to kind of know what you have in order to be grateful. It doesn't work otherwise. There was a homie who worked here who said before he worked here, he'd get up every morning, look in the mirror, and he'd say, you are a mess up. Then he started to work here, and he'd get up and got dressed, ready for work. And before he left the house, he'd look in the mirror and he'd say, I'm proud of you. Which is exactly right. And so you can't be grateful unless you know what you have, but you can't take care of what you have unless you're grateful. And taking care of what you've been given is about this place, about transformation and change and coming to terms with a lot of things. And it's about really making progress on what your life will now look like because of this change. I remember there was a homie came to me and he says, I made a decision, I'm going to dress less gangster. I said, good. He goes, in fact, I'm going to start dressing like you. And I said, you mean old-fashioned and out of it? He said, exactly. So change happens once you start to be grateful and take care of what you have. Or like, there was a homie once who worked here, and one day he came into my office, and he had come up with this analogy. He says, I'm like an oyster, a gang of crap and sand and dirt gather around me, but it makes me stronger, it strengthens me, it protects me, and in the end, I got me a pearl, he says. And this analogy kind of catches him short, and his eyes well up with tears, and he can't speak. And then he pats himself right here, and he says, I got me a pearl. You can't be grateful unless you know what you have, and you won't take care of what you've been given unless you're grateful. That's how it works. So today and tomorrow, don't forget, you've got yourself a pearl right here.